Hey, it's Fred Hophead. My audience for this video is my stepsons who are out and about doing their life, and there may come a time that they want to hear from me or hear my voice. This year's 2025. I mean, it'll probably be on the video, but who knows? It's the end of March 2025. And I wanted to tell you both just some stories about my past or growing up or whatever. There may come a time you might question, like come up with questions maybe you ain't got now. But I just want y'all to know that my whole life I have tried to figure out what it was supposed to be. And I floundered around, but I think the best, most proudest thing I am is being part of your lives. I love you both very much. And I hope I get to see you real soon, because I sure do miss both of you. It's awful quiet in this house, so yeah. But anyways, thought I'd start jotting some things down, just little tidbits and stuff, and anybody else watching, that's all right. I never minded a voyeur. Never been a real private person. But anyways, I wrote some things here. I'm gonna read one of these that I wrote. And I'll let you boys know that some of this is fictional. Some of this is true, some of it's a lie, maybe. These are some of my earliest recollections when I was a young person. So, this is one of the first, I guess, crazy stories that I ever kind of experienced as a youngin'. In North Carolina. So, for both my stepsons, I'm going to dive into it, and like I said, these are rough notes. So if I stumble or if I screw it up, I'll kind of have to reread a few things, because I scrawled this out just kind of as a thought of it, and yeah. But anyways, here we go. Oh, by the way, boys, I had thought about just reading a book to y'all. Thought about reading Lord of the Rings, but hell, I don't know if I got that much time on this planet. So, but also, for everybody under the age of 18, you really ought to shoo off, because there's going to be some cussing here and there, and I don't want to offend you. So if you're under 18, please, shoo off. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is Tales from a Commoner from North Carolina. I guess this one I've entitled Butts, Cookies, and the Colt. Alright. This is from earlier today. At this time I'm writing from boredom, having read for many hours, and again, a week and a half of The Old Man in the Sea, selected short stories by Flannery O'Connor, and Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. Currently I am in limbo and simply had to stop reading, and I decided that now I must write to occupy my mind in a different way. I have thought of my past, and for my therapy or as a way to express my past, I hope that it is some worth to you boys. I write because I am nervous, and my goal is to shorten my time by describing events from my childhood. However, please remember that all parties, any details have been exaggerated, based in fact, and downright lies. It had to be the summer. No, perhaps it was a weekend, but I wore no coat and the morning was mild. I was in front of the shop. You boys may have remembered going to the shop the couple times you went there. The shop was my sanctuary, and my work in the shop was to take wood scraps and carve away at them until they were wood scraps. I carved the ball in the cage. I carved the wooden chain. All were ways to whittle away the time, as I lived many miles from anyone my age. My friends were the river, the shop, the back, and the family dog Gus, and two cats named Cappy and Sheba, or Shibby. I'm going to pull back on the story here. One morning, I'm out in front of the shop with a coffee can, picking up cigarette butts for something either I had did wrong, or perhaps just because it was an order from up high. Up high was the authoritarian of the family, Barton Chester. I hated cigarettes, and then fell in love with them in the military. And the tarry, smelly nature was all over my fingers. How they got there was simple. Barton threw them there. His friends threw them there. Ashtrays from all across the county threw them there. If we didn't have enough cigarette butts, perhaps they were trucked in. In any event, I was the cigarette butt picker-upper of our Spartan estate. Anyway, as I bent to pick up the butts, I heard a revving at the bottom of the driveway. And would you look at that? A fine motorcycle pulled up the driveway, and it was a brand new Harley Davidson. On it was Rob Chopper, If I may stray a moment, Rob was once my nemesis when Barton and Velma had cocktail parties. He would get his party hat on, so to speak, and Rob would pick me up with his big hands and look at me with his glassy eyes and shake me and push me around and say, "Be mean, Fred, be mean, be a man, be mean." I was very young. I know I was speaking and walking, but I do remember wearing footy pajamas, if anybody remember that. And this was clearly harassment from my end. When speaking to Barton about the response, when speaking to Barton about this, his response was, "If you don't like it, hit him." Barton's advice was always very practical. "But he's too big," I said. Barton replied, "Well, son, you have to set him up. Get him when he's weak. Get him when you can surprise him." That was pretty much Barton's credo. Not long after, on a cocktail night, I watched as Rob was leaving. And while he stumbled to the door, glassy-eyed, I ran up saying, Uncle Rob, I got a secret for you." His response was to bend down low and listen closely. Then I shouted, "Be mean!" And I punched him with all I had in his nose. He shot up at once as blood come out of his nostril and shook upon his face. It was the first time, and I hope the last time, that I ever punched a policeman. Anyways, back to the story. Rob was very proud of his new motorbike. He drove up the old asphalt driveway dimpled with gravel. Next, he vroom-vroomed the bike into our patchy clover grass weed yard. Velma slammed. I was never allowed to slam the screen door. Wasn't an adult. Only adults could slam the screen door. Velma slammed the screen door coming out of the kitchen, which was her kingdom. Velma was wearing a flowered t-shirt with a cat in the middle and was looking happily at the whole event. I held my coffee can full of cigarette butts. Well, maybe a third of the way full of cigarette butts. I held that coffee can in front of me. Rob was not done yet. As he shifted the bike into low gear and commenced whirling the Harley Davidson around in circles, what some may call a donut, or possibly in my town of Resume Speed, North Carolina, we called it doing a cookie, spinning around. This motorcycle was a street bike and quite allergic to yard, ice, gravel, etc. I rode quite a bit myself, and tunnels and gravel scared me. Tunnels gave me this feeling of a world that closed in, and the sensation was very constricting. Gravel would mean hitting any washboard and vibrating under them ball bearings quite off the road. Grass was slippery if wet, and surprisingly slippery dry. The grass under Rob's wheels was wet from the dew. It went out from under him. The motorcycle slipped on its third cookie, and Velma yelled. With the bike left on its side, Rob was off in an instant. Rob had run over Velma's foot. I stood in utter surprise. What things adults do. The screen to the shop slammed shut. Again, why do adults get to slam? Out came Barton. What the fuck is going on? Barton was a man of peace and quiet. The house was peace and quiet. The yard was peace and quiet. The edge of the 15-acre wood damn well better be peace and quiet also. Barton looked at the scene with blank expression. He had been reloading cartridges for special accuracy, and it appears this commotion has stirred his anger. Rob assisted Velma to the kitchen door with so many apologies I could not count, and Barton was not counting. Barton said to the air in a very deadpan voice, "That son of a bitch ran over my wife's foot." I put the coffee can on the gravel and sat down on the ground. I feared Barton more than I feared death. I feared his hand. I feared his foot. I feared his fist. Barton went again into the shop. Slam. Again he appeared. Slam. In his hand was one of his many pistols. An ivory-handled, first-generation Colt single-action Army pistol in .45 long Colt. The ivory grips were old and broken, and glued back together many times. The barrel had a stain on the bluing, as if some kind of caustic cleaner was spilt on it. Velma bought these grips for Barton, and he pronounced that every time I hold these grips, I'll think of you, and I'll think of holding you. He began a slow walk up to the house. I moved where I was sitting and hid behind a post holding up the side porch. Barton went into the kitchen door and disappeared. Slam. My anxiety was misinterpreted immediately as excitement. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew it was coming quick. Misinterpreting anxiety would be a misstep for me for most of my life. In several moments, blam sounded from the house. My heart quickened. My imagination ran wild at the possibilities of the event. After what amounted to an eternity of time, all three came out of the kitchen door. Slam. There was Barton to the left and Rob to the right and Velma in the middle, being helped to the picnic table outside the kitchen door, all with drinks in their hands. They sat at the table laughing and slapping the table. They lit cigarettes. I stood up and grabbed my can and continued cleaning the world of cigarette butts. You see, boys, in the old days of Hollywood westerns, rifles and pistols were typically equipped with guns. They were from the Old West of a similar period. Similar meaning that you may see an 1892 Winchester in a Civil War movie. I don't know why, but they used a lot of guns from that period in these westerns. But anyways, because Shane and the man who shot Liberty Valance, etc., did not relish slinging lead during fight scenes, there was invented what is known as the 3-in-1 blank. The 3-in-1 blank meant that the cartridge would fit in a .45 Colt, a .44-40, and a .38-40. It fit in 3 different calibers of gun. An economical achievement for Hollywood. So what had happened is Barton loaded the blank into his revolver so that the cartridge was just indexed left of top dead center. Boys, Colt revolvers turn clockwise. Smith & Wessons turn counterclockwise revolvers. Barton went through the kitchen, went through the living room with 40,000 plates and spoons hung on the wall, and into the single bathroom where a very apologetic Rob was cleaning Velma's foot as Velma reassured Rob that it was okay. Barton leveled the single action dead at Rob and said, "You son of a bitch, you ran over my wife's foot." Blam! That's right. Barton cocked the modified hammer on his .45 and let her go. The aftermath was quite hilarious for all 3. They sat at the picnic table full of carpenter bee holes and laughed a good while. Velma's wounds were a toenail ripped off and a wad burn on the same leg. Sons, blanks are very dangerous at close range. Don't ever shoot a blank at somebody, ever. You can kill somebody, even though it's a blank. Please never try that. Leave it to the professionals. They laughed and drank to the early afternoon when Velma asked me to lunch, and then I ran up after picking up 2 tons of cigarette butts. The end. Boys, I'm going to try to keep doing this, reading little stories. Maybe someday you'll find old Fred Hotpad on the internet and you'll be like, "Oh golly, he's talking to me." Maybe you'll feel good about that. I love you, boys. I love both of you very much, and I miss you every day. So, hope you have a good day.